is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse in somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He was a fan of Night Court growing up, but then again, who wasn't? Stu Horvath.
It's funny, this just came up in the Discord recently, and I asked if anybody had watched the reboot, because I can't bear to, because Night Court makes me so sad in a way, because, you know, so many people have died.
So many people have died. I watched it. It was decent.
Yeah.
So the gimmick is that the judge is Harry's daughter, right?
Yeah, I figured that.
And John Larroquette's character is back, and he's like the only original one that comes back, because I think he's maybe the only one that's still alive. And it's good, but it's not great. And there is definitely like the style of banter and the style of kind of, you know, back and forth that there was of what we were used to as kids growing up watching Night Court, but it just kind of lacks that thing, which I think is, you know, there's always with those old TV shows that moment of like lightning in a bottle that you can't recapture. You know, it's there and then it's gone, you know? But you know, it was all right. I never finished the season. I think it was a shorter season for the first season. I was like, I don't know. That's not really.
Well, it got renewed for a third season, so I guess it's doing well, and that's fine, you know?
Yeah, you know, I think that a lot of TV shows, especially, even though, you know, they're legacy characters, I guess how I would say is this: they're legacy characters, but they're not being written for legacy viewers.
Yeah.
You know, they're being written for more 18 to 34 demographic now,
Which is good. They have their Night Court, they have their Magnum. It's all good.
Yeah, they had a
the cycle continues.
Handsome Magnum, you know, and they did all right with it. Yeah, it's not my Magnum, but then again, you know
it's
what?
Definitely not my Magnum. But
I'm no longer in the 18 to 34 demographic by about 11 years. So, Stu, what are we talking about today?
Oh yeah, we have a role-playing game podcast, right? We're not
Something like that.
We're not here to talk about old TV shows. I mean, we could if people want.
We could, yeah.
But
we'll get some hate mail, but you know,
I don't even check that anymore. Like, there's probably a pile of it laying there, and I haven't looked in over a year. Which I think is the way you're supposed to do it. Today we're talking about the Court of Ardor in Southern Middle Earth, which it isn't actually a MERP. It's close to a MERP. It's almost a MERP, but it was released in 1983. So that makes it one of the about 6 products that Iron Crown Enterprises released once they got the Middle Earth license, but before they developed the lighter version of Rollmaster that became Middle Earth Role Playing, aka MERP, which is also, I think, a sound that Muppets make. I recently completed my collection of MERPs.
Oh, you did?
I did. I have all of the first edition MERPs.
Oh, wow.
Which I am really excited about. It's funny because like there's an inverse proportional thing going on, because I'm increasingly, as I keep doing this and reading more fantasy and just evolving as a human being or whatever, I've just put more distance down between me and my old school love of Tolkien, which is fine. Like whatever, like it's still good. It's just like I don't need to reread it or watch the movies again. But because I've sort of like gotten off of like the actual Middle Earth, the appeal of the weirdness of Iron Crown's Middle Earth has increased, because it's like, okay, I don't know if folks remember this. We covered MERP a long time ago. They did some weird ass stuff with MERP right off the bat. Once they had the license, one of the first products they put out was the campaign supplement, which is basically like the weather of Middle Earth and this really big poster map. And the poster map you would think would just be like the area that you remember from the books. And you know, it's like Mordor's in the lower right, and the Shires in the upper left. And, you know, there's some mountains in between and a forest or two. And that would be fine. And you sort of look at that map and you think, oh, Middle Earth's pretty small. But then you see this poster map that they put out, and it's this gigantic thing where Mordor is basically in the center, and there's this whole southern section of the continent and a whole eastern section of the continent.
Okay.
And basically, for me, I thought that this was somehow they knew more about Middle Earth than I did when I was a kid. I was just like, oh, well, they have the license. They're making Middle Earth stuff. So this must be something like maybe that's what's in that Silmarillion book that I can't get through. But no, they just made it all up. And like they made the continent so big, like the map is gorgeous, but they made the continent so big. They did a whole bunch of stuff in the south of Middle Earth, which this is part of. And then they have this whole eastern stretch that they never developed at all.
Really? They just left it?
Yeah, they never got a chance to. They also never like did a supplement for Barad-dûr, which is like where the bad guy lives. They never got around to that too. So there's all sorts of weird things about it. Like if I mean you could see the difference between this and like the One Ring or the way other games have approached other properties and bringing them into the role playing. Like there's like a methodology to it that has been refined. This started in '83. And they were a small outfit based in Virginia that somehow got the Middle Earth license and then just kind of went like kooky with it in a way that like defies our current expectations about what people would do with an IP.
Actually, you want to know something funny? You know how they got it, right?
No.
They asked.
Oh, yeah.
Because at that point, who fucking cared about the Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth and that other bullshit? Like, I'm sure they were just like, hey, could we license this? And like the people were like, yeah, we like money.
Yeah. And nobody else thought to do it. Like good on them, man.
Yeah. I mean, granted, try doing that circa 2000 whenever the actual, Lord of the Rings movies came out. Well, then you're going to be paying through the nose for that, I'm sure.
Oh, well, that's exactly why there is no more MERP today, is because the license holder pulled it because they realized they could relicense it for more money.
Yep.
It was really rotten. That's why a lot of the later MERP second edition stuff is hard to find and expensive, because they were left holding the bag with it and had to pulp it once the license was pulled.
Oh, that's so terrible.
It's right? Like, it hurts me.
Yeah.
Anyway, Middle Earth role-playing, the system doesn't come around until 1984. They immediately set to work sort of making these source books that they sort of intended for two audiences. They didn't really intend for anybody to, I mean, they would have liked it if everybody was just suddenly like, oh, let's play Rolemaster so we could play in Middle Earth. But they really intended the Middle Earth products to either be read by just fans of Middle Earth stuff, like fantasy readers, that they thought there would be a crossover audience for. And there was, much the same as the Star Wars expanded universe stuff was picked up by non-role players. And they also figured that without advertising it, that people would convert it for D&D. And inside most of them is some guidance on how to convert the Rolemaster system to D&D.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Even when it becomes MERP, there's always conversion rules. But so yeah, it's really weird because and I understand why they did it. So the first 6, it's like, there's the overall campaign thing that presents this huge world. Then you get the source book for Angmar, which is northeast of the Shire. God, I know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it does.
And that's Tolkien. Everything aside of the Court of Ardor that they put out initially was actually rooted in Tolkien's work. So you get like North Mirkwood, South Mirkwood. I think you also Bree they did. Maybe Rivendell too was in that period. But Court of Ardor is different because it's Corsairs of Umbar, I think is another one, and Gondor all got detailed really. Oh, and Moria were the things that they did right away. A lot of them feature key art from the Bakshi films on the cover.
Okay, that's fun.
Which is cool. The map, there's medallions are sort of on the borders of the map that are feature key art from the film too. But Court of Ardor is basically the one product that has nothing to do with Tolkien's Middle Earth. And I've long felt that Middle Earth role-playing material was somehow weird, and I've had a hard time trying to figure out why. Then I discovered, during the course of vintage RPG history, that Iron Crown put out a different campaign setting specifically for Rolemaster called Shadow World, and it was derived from their very, very first couple scenarios, the Iron Wind and Shade of the Sinking Plain, Cloud Lords of Tanara, which they called Lore Master at the time. But Iron Crown started with the Iron Wind scenario and Arms Law back in 1980, and basically they had this little setting, and then they put it aside because they got MERP, and then later on they came back to Shadow World.
Okay.
Shadow World feels like very Tolkien, but also like I'm gonna throw like weird science fiction stuff in and make it like extra odd. It's all the work of Terry K. Amthor from the very beginning. He's one of the founders of Iron Crown. And once I found Shadow World, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. MERP was sort of like, because Terry K. Amthor was writing so much MERP material, MERP sort of feels like Shadow World. And like you can see why, like if you look at Shadow World, it really kind of like contextualizes the weirdness of the Southern MERP stuff. And there was a method to it. There was a reason for it. This idea, they realized that as much as people wanted to adventure in Middle Earth, adventuring in Middle Earth during the War of the Rings sucks.
Yeah.
Because you're not the main characters and you know how it ends. So the MERP line really struggled with presenting stuff that was new to players. They did it a couple different ways. One of them was to develop the South, Harad, which is mentioned in Tolkien, but not developed. And basically Tolkien presents it as everybody there's evil because they're under the thumb of Sauron. So they developed the South as like this other continent that with different people, and to Iron Crown's credit, they said that no, there's plenty of free people there resisting Sauron. Like the war is going on everywhere. It's just that we only know about this one section of it because of the books, which is cool, but it just doesn't feel like Middle Earth because the Tolkien's work is really singular. It has a distinct feel. The other thing that they tried to do was change the timeline. So like you would adventure in the Second Age or earlier in the Third Age or in the Fourth Age after Sauron's fall. All of that's also very confusing because like people aren't as familiar with it, or it was just never very clear. A lot of the MERP products contain scenarios for different timelines. So like you'd get one for like after the War of the Ring, and but you'd also have one from the Second Age, and it's just like, what am I going to do with both of those? Like, doesn't make sense. So they struggled with that. Court of Ardor, the topic at hand, is the first sort of instance of them trying to put together something that would offer something new, yet would still speak to some sort of core Middle Earth experience, but would allow players the flexibility to do their own thing. And it's written by Terry K. Amthor. And it feels so much like Shadow World. And, well, okay, so the Court of Ardor is way south in what they call Mumakil,
Right.
which I think is where the elephants come from, the war elephants. Never really expanded on in Tolkien. And basically the whole book is it's a source book for an alternate set of villains. These folks, the court is a group of dark elves, dark in that they worked with Morgoth, who is the Dark Lord before Sauron. They worked with Morgoth back in the day when he turns the lamps out and like was trying to destroy the sun and the moon. Like they were his lackeys. Morgoth dies. The court sort of survives somehow, and basically they don't serve Sauron, but they are sort of on the same team, although far removed. So it's just basically this other hub of evil. It's a bunch of profiles for like this really elaborate court that has they're all tied to the weird Rollmaster magic system. So they have like 4 different schools in Rollmaster.
Right.
So each court has like a strong affinity to each house of magic. And basically it's character profiles coupled with their islands and their strongholds. So big maps of villain houses.
Oh, I love that.
It's great. It's totally unusable. Like, I guess it is usable in that like this is like big boss book, and you could structure a campaign where you're working towards like penetrating and these fortresses, but like no player really wants to.
Mm.
So the big bad houses, like you don't just go in there. And when you do, they're going to kick your butt. But the thing that I find really, really sort of hilariously interesting about this is that there's so many of these folks in the court, and they have so many different responsibilities and interests and spheres of power, and they're spread out. They're all over the place. That they have this magical communication system, and they all basically align in some way with tarot cards. So they have this deck of tarot cards where they could use them to, like, they pull the card of the person they want to talk to, and they can magically talk to them through the card, and they could
That's
also
interesting.
they can also channel magic through the cards. It is interesting, and Roger Zelazny used it to great effect in his Amber novels. He wrote 10 novels about the Royal House of Amber, who use a court of trumps to, like, communicate with. It's literally Terry K. Amthor took Amber and was just like Middle Earthed it. And I don't know why people don't like talk about this. It's so good and flagrant. And like reading this the other day, I was just like, oh my God, this is why MERP feels so weird, because it's like they didn't care to keep it just MERP. They put whatever they wanted into it. And now that I've seen this, I'm sure that if I start going through MERP, I'll be able to pick up other fantasy stuff that they were just like, fuck it. Let's stick that in there too. They didn't keep the IP, like, they didn't pretend that it was a holy cow, that it was like they had to like hew towards this like canonicity in the way that, like, I mean, the One Ring does, now, like there's this idea that the source material is so important to accurately reproduce. I just love the fact that there's just like the Court of Ardor represents just a complete disregard for Tolkien in Tolkien's world, and it's so cool.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's awesome because, like, in a way, we always talk about Gygax and Appendix N, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I think when you look at something like this, where you have the ability to kind of go down that route with your own Appendix N and have things that are so far outside the traditional The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings story that, you're essentially on the other side of the planet.
Yep.
You're not directly in the conflict, and I'm sure there's conflict everywhere, but like as you watch, like, say, modern Star Wars, where you're like, oh, they're on the outer rim, like, sure, there's a war going on, sure, like, we see soldiers show up here from time to time, but like we're kind of very far removed from it. Yeah. And then you have the idea that, like, the Lord of the Rings is set in stone, and you're not playing Pip, you're not playing Merry, you're not Samwise, you're not fucking Frodo or Gandalf. So, like, what does it matter what you do on the other side of the world? Like, even if you are in conflict, whether you live or die, whether you beat the local bad guy in your area, it does not matter, because on the other side of the world, some little dude is just trying to drop a ring into a volcano. Like, so yeah, man, like, just anything goes. That's fun. That's what makes RPGs fun. And also knowing that a lot of things that they do in MERP, they weren't shy about being like, yeah, just adapt it for your D&D game, but we can't call it D&D, but you can in your basement buy our book.
Yeah, I've gone through. I basically I have 2 weeks of posts queued up of MERP for 2025, and having gone through them just now, like, they are clearly, many of them are Middle Earth in name only, like several of them, and they're good. They're really, really good, but they are basically just like D&D Celtic or D&D Norse. Yeah, you get like tentative connections to the larger Tolkien mythology. Like, oh yeah, there's a Dark Lord, but like there's always a Dark Lord. Like, it's easy enough to like move that or just ignore that.
Yeah.
And like
something else.
The one book, I did so many of them that they're all jumbled in my head at the moment, but like there's this one that it's just like it's such like this Celtic Bronze Age thing that like gets at something about standing stones and why they're so cool, and burial mounds, and it's like none of it feels like Tolkien, but it feels good. It's cool. Like I'm totally like thinking of using them as one shots if I ever need to. Like they're just really well done. MERP became this sales label that allowed them to just kind of produce this really high quality material with fantastic artists while being like lightly beholden to Tolkien, like in just like the most minor way, just like enough to like make the whole line cohesive and saleable, you know?
Now, do you think that, because I'm sure this came out like what, towards the end of the run?
Court of Ardor?
Yeah.
No, Court of Ardor is one of the very first Middle Earth products that they put out.
Oh, so they're not even like, it's the end. No one's looking. Let's just get weird. Like they went weird up front.
This was the plan. I can only interpret this as like signaling that like we are going to do this. Now, the Court of Ardor never shows up again. They never develop this area again. Like it's just a book that's sort of like floating out there, but they do develop other stuff that's just as freaking weird. It's really strange. But yeah, I think the intention was always to just use this as like a testing ground for cool stuff rather than being super beholden to the Tolkien name.
That is so wild.
You would never in a million years do that. Like imagine getting like I don't know, the Wheel of Time, like any big fantasy series. Like imagine getting that and just being like, okay, we'll do some of that, but we're also going to throw our own stuff in there too. Like your licensor would pull it immediately. They'd just be like, what are you doing? You know?
Oh, dude, like forget it. Yeah, like what license?
Yeah,
you're done.
But like the way IP stuff worked in the 80s, like people weren't interested in it and didn't understand it as like a larger commoditization of the fiction. So like it's like MERP and Star Trek both sort of represent like this weird chaotic Wild West version of IP development that just couldn't happen in the modern era.
I mean, like think about it like this. Back then, right? Sure, there were like sequels to movies, right? But that was it. It wasn't like it is now where, well, we've run out of story to tell, so now we have to tell like a Golem story, like where they're trying to wring out every last drop of IP by making more movies and TV shows and cartoons and comic tie-ins and this, that, and the other thing. Like back in the day, it was like, okay, you had a movie, and if you're lucky, the movie had a sequel, and then that was it. And then you get this licensing stuff where it was like, yeah, they're kind of loose on it because they're like, you know what, we're probably not going to make another movie, or like if we do it, whatever, we'll figure it out later. So then you got to get weird. You got to kind of go off campus a little bit and do this, right? Yeah. Whereas now it's like, no, you can't set foot anywhere out of line other than the specific way that we do things, because we internally are going to find a way to milk every last drop of this IP.
Right.
Yeah. We don't need you to keep it warm for us anymore. The burner's always on.
I just realized that you mentioned like there is like a Gollum prequel movie coming out.
There is. Yeah.
That's why. Like I don't like that. Did anybody ask for that?
No, not a single person. And I don't even, and honestly, truthfully, I don't even know a single person who's watching like the Lord of the Rings TV show on Amazon that they're spending like hundreds of millions of dollars on.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I did it's February. My cousin got married. I did a red eye, a literal, like I flew in on one day. I got there, met everyone for dinner that night, woke up the next day, went to my cousin's wedding, got on a plane, came home. Like a true, back-to-back stack of Jack red eye.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way, I watched the extended cut of The Lord of the Rings and The Two Towers.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way back, I watched the extended cut of Return of the King, and then finally fell asleep. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers in a while, go get the director's cut, treat yourself. Those movies go hard. Those movies go so hard. Like, there's a reason why people love them so much when they came out when they did, because they go hard. And they're actually really good, really well written, really well acted. Like, it was like this movie was like Heart with a budget. Like, I cannot recommend going back and watching the director's cut of those movies enough. I mean, it's kind of hard to do when you have like a day job and kids and stuff, but man, if you're on a plane, that's your time. Sky Crime.
one of these days I got to go back because as I get farther from seeing them in theaters, I'm more like, whatever. Like, I just got more and more down on it, but I think that they are probably okay. I got tired of everyone loving them so much, and then the TV show, like the attempts to continue it, like grate on my nerves in a weird way that MERP doesn't. But you know those video games like the I don't even know what they're called, but they were sort of open world and you go into Mordor and like you fight orcs and stuff.
Yeah.
The second one has like Shelob is like the villain, and it's like not that interesting because we again know what happens and who does for Shelob, but also because like they didn't think like a giant spider was like spooky enough, they like make her a sexy lady too, and it's just like I don't like there's I don't think that the Tolkien text is sacred, obviously, because I like MERP, but like I also don't think that like that was like the correct move. Like it just doesn't feel like anything. Like that just seems like the lowest, the easiest thing that you could have done.
I mean, really, it is low hanging fruit. But in the end of the day, I would take a sexy lady spider person over a fucking cloud, like they do in all these other movies. First Hulk movie with Ang Lee. Well, the bad guy's the Absorbing Man. Oh wow, we're gonna see the Absorbing Man. What's that? It's the Absorbing Man. It's a cloud.
True.
Well, Fantastic Four. Oh shit, Galactus is here. All right, we're gonna get to see Galactus in a movie. This is gonna be okay. It's a giant pink cloud. Green Lantern movie. Parallax. All right. Fucking can't get that wrong. Fucking smoke monster. Lost. A smoke monster. Give me a sexy spider lady every day and twice on Sunday instead of a goddamn smoke monster.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, like she's not even like a sexy spider lady, I believe. I think that she's just like a sexy lady who turns into a spider periodically.
Sure, man. Not a cloud.
I mean, she does still turn into a spider. And if it's been a while since you've read Tolkien, I do highly recommend looking up his descriptions of Shelob, because like he definitely put his horror writer hat on for that. It's that is a good paragraph and a half.
Nice. Well, Stu, do you have any final thoughts about this MERP activity?
Good luck finding Court of Ardor. For I guess because it's so awesome and people realize it, or because it's unloved and there's so few copies of it. I don't know. It's expensive. It's hard to find at a decent price. I managed to find it miraculously. I never thought that I was going to own this because it's just like it's always over $100 on eBay, and I'm just not. I will not do that.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough after a couple other pieces like just wound up like being cheap on eBay. I found this in a lot for $60 with like 5 other things. So I was just like, oh my gosh, like it's gonna, like if I divide it by 6, it's like $10 sold.
That's a nice price. Nice.
Like I didn't care that I already owned the other 5. Like it was so like, yeah, $60, sure. But yeah, it's routinely expensive. But if you do see it at a not stupid price, definitely pick it up because it's a fun read. And the interior art, it's got a cover by Gail McIntosh, which I think is great. I think she does some fantastic work for early MERP. And then Charles Peele does the interiors, and he has this really sort of nouveau stipple style that's really, really good. And he didn't do nearly enough RPG art. It was a treat to see his stuff in there.
Well, very cool. This was another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
They could find me on vintagerpg.com. And you know what you could do?
What can you do?
You could go there and you could search, I believe, Iron Crown Enterprises and or MERP, MERP, all caps. And you could search that. And you can see all of the posts that I've ever written about MERP. And it's all right there. And you can kind of see this whole thing develop in text. And you don't have to worry about like searching a hashtag or like having to scroll back on Instagram or anything. It's like it's all right there. The pictures are big.
Awesome.
It's really, I don't know why.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, because we had high hopes for Instagram. Anywho, you can find me across the internet, John McGuire RPG. I'm posting more. I'm going places. I'm doing things. Pre-order for Brain Eaters from me and the Neon Lord Brian Shutter is a zombie survival RPG. Roll a 5 to stay alive. All you need to do. Open world entertainment in the 80s versus zombies is available now at braineatersrpg.com. If you are so inclined to head over to Kickstarter, we're going to have a get notified link up for Monster Book, which is going to be the tentative title right now of our monster manual-esque book for 3-2-1 action RPG. So I want you to click on that for your old buddy HB and get notified of launch for that. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. And if you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerepg. We get a behind-the-scenes look at whatever Sue's working on, behind-the-scenes look at whatever I'm working on. We've got a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. Early release episodes for as little as $1 a month. $5 gets you in with a game with me once a month. I run random RPGs every month. $10 gets you in with Stu for his West Marches, and also on my tier as well. Patreon.com/vintagerepg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dego West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.